Hey everyone, what's going on? Matthew here on the channel, joined by my wonderful host and best friend.
Callum.
Now, this might be a podcast episode. I'm not too sure. We usually say these things and end up, we kind of forget that we've been recording for a certain amount of time. But I'd imagine this to be a podcast because, as you've seen by the title, it's the Shang-Chi review. We're maybe a little bit on time with this review actually because I think it's still pretty massive across the theaters. I imagine it's still the number one film in the world at the minute, and of course it's an MCU movie, so by nature we're going to talk about it for a long time. I think the last one we did, Black Widow, ended up being like a 90-minute podcast. So yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna have a lot to say about this one because it's been taking the world by storm. It's getting really good reviews, and people are really praising its diversity, how it deals with the action, all those kind of things, which we'll definitely discuss. So yeah, I'll pass over to you, Callum, to explain, the breakdown of what is, not a very, popular character, or it's certainly not a very well-known comic book character anyway. I'd imagine the character will be very popular, given
Excuse me
the
a
given.
moment. Are you knocking my door, Jake?
But yeah, I don't. I'd imagine the character is going to be a lot more popular now, given the MCU film. So yeah, I'll pass over to you, Callum, to explain what the film is about.
As you said, I don't think we are too late with this review because some regions haven't even had this film come out yet, and then some regions are still in lockdown and are unable to see it. So this character, there's quite a few retcons within this film regarding the character's origin. There were some problematic elements in regards to his parentage in the comics. The character that was his father was, sort of a thinly veiled Asian stereotype, called Fu Manchu. So here they've supplemented that, and they've changed that so that now his father is actually, the character that we would know from the comics as the Mandarin. However, he's been modernized and given, far more depth. I am sweating here. I'm really dying here, Matthew.
It's boiling. Yeah, there's kind of a new kind of heat wave in Northern Ireland at the minute. It always happens with like an MCU film or something, or like a really big film to talk about. We end up melting on camera. Yeah, usually like 20 degrees in Northern Ireland is a heat wave by my standards. So yeah, it's a really warm evening, and we're doing this like close to midnight as well, and it's still like where I am, it's reasonably cool. But I don't know. Maybe it's the pressure of doing such a critically acclaimed films getting to us. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I mean, I think we're probably going to break this down non-spoiler and spoiler, just because it is kind of a new release. That's kind of our way to go on the channel. So, bro, I mean, if you want to open the floor with your notes, sure, and I'll just chip in where I can as always.
So this is a very strange experience for me because it's been many years since I've actually watched an MCU film and I've had this sense of giddiness. The most recent film we had was Black Widow. The film before that was Spider-Man Far From Home, which I think we could probably say those are two average films. And then the Disney Plus series, the one that's really grasp my imagination and come close to making me feel that way was Loki. But really, it was watching this film where I just felt like that there hasn't been a moment in an MCU project quite like the bus fight that's in this film, which has been heavily marketed. I don't think we're gonna I don't think we're really gonna go into anything that isn't covered by the marketing, at least in the non-spoiler section. But while I was watching that, I was just wide-eyed and smiling, thinking this is something special.
I'd have to agree, Callum, completely, buddy. The action in here is up there with the Winter Soldier. I've heard a lot of people say it's better, and I think in some instances that bus scene alone is a better than a lot of the action there. I think the Winter Soldier, for me, has probably the best action scene in terms of that bridge scene in that film, but everything else kind of falls um not necessarily flat because the action is still incredible, but the bridge scene is really where that sort of um climax isn't really gets to the top tier really there. But I mean, I think in this film the action's pretty stellar throughout. It's a lot different as well. It's varied, and it's got a really unique score to it as well. I'm not too sure who scored this film, but it's got that kind of traditional kind of music that you would come to expect with this kind of culture, but also similar to how Black Panther dealt with it, it's got that sort of modern like Americanization with it, with like the sort of the beats and stuff like that. It's got like a good bass to it. I know Black Panther score was really well received as well. So I mean, yeah, I mean, I've nothing but positive things to say in regards to the action here. It's so well shot that it shows you, shows you actually what's going on. It's not too like cut, 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 cut. And for the most part, I think the CGI is really well incorporated as well. Certainly in that bus sort of scene in San Francisco, that's kind of like where the MCU is just smashing it, to be honest, Callum. Like that's probably the best MCU scene in a solo movie probably since, I'm kind of looking back at Doctor Strange Dormammu, maybe that long ago. It's certainly up there, man, with like one of the classic MCU scenes for me at this point.
Yeah, especially with the CGI that you mentioned, I think overall it's absolutely incredible, especially,
Yeah,
considering the kind of low bar that the especially third acts of recent MCU films have set.
certainly.
So here, it was incredibly impressive, especially in the third act. I also think it's one of the funniest MCU films. It doesn't tell too many, outright jokes, which I think Marvel kind of falls into the trap of. I absolutely love the Ant-Man films, but I do think there are moments where they're trying a bit too hard, maybe. But here,
Yeah.
you don't really have any of that, but it's a thoroughly enjoyed time, especially with the presence of Aquafina. And I think when they do tell outright jokes, there's namely one character that we can talk about later. I think the audience were in hysterics.
Yeah, no, I agree. And with that sort of first half of the film being sort of more with that kind of Americanized culture as well in San Francisco, like I thought that was a really smart move as well. And with that, I think Aquafina is a real bright spot at the film. I think the first time I had sort of was aware of her was in our Raya and the Last Dragon review, which I thought her voice work was really good. She's got a really distinct, unique sounding voice to her, and I think that really her performance and her bubbliness and her tenacity really carries through to live action. I think she's really good here. I watched a couple of reviews in this. I was kind of sending off podcasts. We don't really watch reviews anymore, just because, not necessarily because we do them on channel. It's just because I don't know. It's just I don't really enjoy that content as much watching it really. And I suppose maybe doing reviews on the channel does come into it, I guess, a little bit. But I mean, I saw a few reviews saying people didn't really like her, or people expected her not to be good. But I thought she was a real bright spot here, and I think I'd love for her character to return in a potential sequel. This maybe, I mean, imagine this. I definitely imagine this film's getting a sequel. I mean, it'd be crazy not to do a sequel, given that how well it's been received.
Yeah, absolutely. And even present in the marketing, you can see that the characters of Shang-Chi and Katie are pitched as this kind of package deal. I think something like that and the film itself, are both unlike anything that we've ever seen in the MCU, especially because her character Katie isn't actually a pre-existing character within the Marvel comics, and the character herself has no powers. But I just think that Aquafina's on-screen performance was so captivating and so delightful that it's
Yeah.
greatly appreciated, and I think
Yeah.
she's gonna be a fan favorite.
Yeah, and with that as well, I think Simu Liu is just as good as well. I think he's definitely going to cement himself as a household name within the next 5 years. I wasn't aware of him before this film, but I think he's just phenomenal here. He's really good. He's really funny, really witty. He kind of has that sort of Chris Evans energy, where like when you need him to be serious, he can be serious, and he really holds his own in the action scenes as well. So I think he's absolutely fantastic, and the duo that I necessarily didn't expect to be as good as it was really blew me away.
Yeah. I honestly think that making Shang-Chi the son of the Mandarin was a stroke of genius. As I said, there are some you know, not so great there's not some great continuity within the comics of who his father is. That they recently retconned who his father. Well, maybe not so recently, but they ended up retconning who his father was. But
Yeah.
it's still never been the Mandarin. So this is a completely original take on the character, and I just think it immediately organically folded him into the world just due to his connection to this pre-existing character, not only in the comics but this character with sort of legacy and
Oh
lore
yeah,
within
definitely.
the MCU already.
Yeah, completely, buddy. And if anyone's watching this who hasn't or who has seen Iron Man 3 and are wondering, oh, I'm a little bit confused here, like they do, without giving too much away, they do address that, and they certainly make that clear as to what's going on there. So I think if you're watching that film and you're a little bit confused as to which character's which, or who is the true Mandarin, those kind of questions. That's certainly addressed there. But I think for me, this film it's really unique. It blends that traditional Chinese culture really nicely with sort of this more modern Americanization to it as well. And I get it's an American film. It's by the nature of it's going to be Americanized to a degree, but it's not too overt. Like, it's subtle enough where it still remains true to that sort of culture and that and the history there. So I think this film's really, really fantastic. But the only thing, if I were going to say criticism in the non-spoiler, would probably be, I think the villain presence is quite lackluster. That's something the MCU is trying to has been doing a bit better recently, but I think this was maybe a backward step in terms of, I didn't really feel there was any direction there. And I feel like the film, leading into that, it can feel quite cliche in some respects, but that's how I felt anyway.
Yeah, I think I have some mild criticisms within the spoiler section.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Tony Leung as Wenwu, I think that his performance, I think his presence maybe is a bit too minimal to really be marveled at. But the performance itself, I think, is right up there with the top tier of the MCU.
Yeah, I think he's really captivating as well. He really owns his presence on the camera, and the film actually is quite emotional in some respects as well. There's a lot of kind of flashbacks to Shang-Chi's life and things like that. And it really, for a film that is not overly long, I mean, it's still 2 hours 10 minutes, it's still quite long, but for a film that has limited time with a lot of characters, I think they really flesh them out really well, and it definitely makes me want to see another sequel, or and to make him an Avenger. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't have anything further on the film in the non-spoiler section, Matthew. Did you have anything else?
No, mate. No, most of my points really come into the spoiler section, so that's probably why this is a bit. The section is typically a bit shorter for me. But, buddy, if you want to hop in with a classic massive hitter piece of shit, I think we both know what it's going to be for ourselves. But I'll let you answer first.
Yeah, I mean, it's of course a massive hit. I think this is the. I don't think we've had a piece of shit this year so far. I mean, there may have been a piece of shit, but I don't think we've labeled anything as such.
Yeah.
But I think this is a massive step up. In comparison to the recent MCU stuff. The Disney Plus shows are on a very reasonable level of quality, but I think this really stepped it up for me. I think it's maybe just a personal feeling that it really just connected with me. Where other films haven't. Avengers Endgame, I was never hyped for it, but I was still disappointed by it. Spider-Man Far From Home, I love Spider-Man, but it just didn't feel quite right. And then Black Widow was perfectly serviceable, average. But this was really just a step up from the recent stuff. So I was just massively impressed.
Yeah, I'd have to concur. I mean, I think it's certainly not perfect. I think there's other solo Marvel films that I do prefer, and I just want to come out and say that I think this film is incredible. Don't get me wrong, it's still really good, but it's personally, I don't want to lie and say it's my favorite solo film or anything like that, because it isn't. But it's still really good. There's a lot to be loved here, and I think this film is going to do really well, both critically and financially. I think it's a really good family film as well that a lot of people can enjoy, and I'd implore a lot of people just to go see it. Like, if it's not your typical MCU blockbuster. It's got heart in there, it's got passion, and I mean, yeah, although the villain presence, it's not as good as some other previous ones we've seen in the Marvel movies as of late, or and I do believe this film is quite cliche in some regards as well. I still think it's a really great film that I would say, definitely go watch it, definitely go see it, which is the biggest, that's the main takeaway, I think, from a film. If you if it's got rewatchability to it, or it implores people to see it. So yeah, I mean, it's a massive hit for me. I had a really good time with this one. But
yeah,
going into
I also don't think anyone in the MCU loves being in the MCU as much as Simu Liu.
It really is,
and I think that really radiates on screen.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely suggest anyone to go see some of his interviews and stuff, with those kind of things, because he's a really bubbly personality, and he clearly loves the character. Like, I really enjoy when actors get involved with sort of the comic book lore. I think that's something Brie Larson did for Captain Marvel, which, although she gets a lot of hate online, I really like Brie Larson. I'm one of those few people that really has a lot of time for her. I know you do as well, and I know Gal Gadot as well has really engaged herself in the Wonder Woman lore. So it's good to see, because it's just it helps give sort of authenticity to the character and stuff like that, and really helps flesh them out more. But yeah, I mean, bro, if you want to bring us into spoilers, then.
So, we see a lot about the background of the Mandarin, him taking possession of the Ten Rings themselves and building an army around them. Within the comics, they're actually, finger rings, and each one has a different power. They're of alien origin, and they're all different colors. I think there was potentially some, internal conversations that, the multicolored rings were they're a bit too reminiscent of the Infinity Gauntlet. So they wanted something visually different from that. So, this time they're sort of visually altered to be more, bracelets. How do you feel about that change?
I think they looked absolutely incredible on the big screen, to be honest with you, Callum. And although the Mandarin in the comic books is never a character I particularly know a lot about or enjoy, I guess like the finger rings do look a lot like the Infinity Gauntlet. I can definitely see how a lot of people can perceive it that way. I think the film handled it really well. Um, it's something that throughout the film I thought it was inevitable that Shang-Chi was going to get his hands on them. It's because I think a lot of people will probably say he's kind of a bit of a boring character that all he does is martial arts. So like, what's the difference between him and Iron Fist or him and Daredevil? So they kind of had to say, let's have something different in there. So I think it makes sense for him to have the 10 rings by the end. But yeah, I think they looked really cool. I would like to see a bit more of them actually. I think like as MacGuffins go, and not necessarily that these are MacGuffins, but as superhero weapons go, that these are pretty good. I really enjoyed them. What about you, bro?
Yeah, I like their practical application, because of course, if they were rings on his fingers, then they couldn't be thrown as projectiles or used as weapons. Really, it's just
Yeah,
they would be able to conjure stuff and change stuff, which I mean, are essentially the powers of the Infinity Gauntlet. But what I do miss a little bit is the color. I think
yeah, they're a bit bland.
it would have been a nice visual pop if if they had been rainbow colored. I
Yeah,
mean, maybe something a bit maybe it would have been a bit too visually jarring with the rest of the stylistic elements of the film. But I think that would have been nice maybe.
yeah, bro. But it's funny you say that because I kind of like how maybe I've misinterpreted this, but it's for when I watched the film, I didn't really recall a time where they explained the origin of them. They kind of just say, you know, uh, the Mandarin character had kind of just acquired them from like a meteorite or something like that. And I kind of like that in the sense that sometimes we don't need to know everything. Sometimes it's nice just to say, okay, this happened. Let's just move on with it. It's just in the lore now. It's in the film. Let's just get on with it. So I really like that, and I think that really comes into it for me because the film doesn't really feel like a superhero film. It doesn't have it doesn't really have that scene where they get these really elaborate abilities or costumes. I mean, it definitely comes in that at the end, but it's nothing that it's so overt where you've got the montage of those kind of things. So I really didn't feel like a comic book film to me whatsoever. Like I look back at sort of solo, you know, Marvel films. Iron Man springs to mind. Like that's a classic superhero tale. Whereas this, it kind of feels more pre-established, which I really enjoyed as well. And there's no for the amount of MCU cameos that there is in here, it's at a level where it does feel like something fresh, something original, where it doesn't feel like, okay, here's Doctor Strange, here's the Falcon. It's not all these crazy colorful characters with really cool costumes and masks and shields and hammers. It just feels authentic, and it feels like a film that if you've never seen an MCU film before, you could still go to the cinema and really enjoy it and understand what's going on. So I think it's a really smart move from them to do that after all the event films coming up.
Yeah, I think so too. And to mention some of those cameos that you brought up,
Yes, let's do it.
I think we should talk about Wong versus Abomination, which I think we can both sort of say we're a bit disappointed was
Yeah,
revealed in the
absolutely.
marketing,
Yeah.
because in the end it doesn't actually amount to anything. Well, it doesn't amount to a lot. It's a 10-second fight, and we've seen the entirety of it in the marketing campaign. And I just feel like anyone that would be excited about that fight or those cameos are exactly the people that you don't have to convince to come to the film. If you're
100%.
using that as a draw, the only people that are going to be excited about that prospect are people that were already coming.
Yeah, especially when you publicize the fact that Tim Roth, a really well respected and popular actor, is back to voice this. And we had kind of made the comment that all he says in the film is "grr," and that's it, right? So it's bizarre. I really like the redesign, but like you said, people who are going to be interested and know who that character is from a film, what, over 10 years ago now, you don't need to convince them to watch the film. They're going no matter if the Abomination's in it or not. You know what I mean? So I think it was a real waste. I think the Wong character is an interesting one because he kind of comes to play later on in a post-credit scene. We'll get into that. But I thought the Abomination was thoroughly disappointing. Really, really disappointing. I mean, the redesign's class. Like, why bother doing such an intricate redesign just to have him in like a 10 seconds, 10-second scene? Like, it's a bizarre choice. I just hope they maybe bring him back for, well, I know he's come back for She-Hulk, but, for maybe a Thunderbolts or a Dark Avengers or some kind of project like that, because, yeah, I thought the redesign was exceptional, actually, what they did there.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. I'm not sure, as we see in the post-credit scene, you know, Smart Hulk has actually reverted back to Bruce Banner,
Yes.
presumably, so that they don't have to CGI Smart Hulk for She-Hulk.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm worried that we're actually not going to see much of Abomination himself, but more Emil Blonsky.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility there. And on the subject of cameos as well, I'd kind of said to you after we saw the film that, given the martial arts presence in this film, I thought it would have made sense to maybe have an Iron Fist cameo or maybe a Karnak, if anyone remembers him from the Inhumans, because they're kind of another two sort of martial arts experts in the MCU, if you will. So, and especially with was it Ta Lao in this film as well? It could have some connection to Kung Lun, I suppose, but you never know. I mean, it's definitely something they could explore in a future film, but maybe the timing isn't right, given that Iron Fist was only cancelled maybe a year or two ago now. It's fairly recent, so maybe that's why. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone. I think we're in the very small majority of people who enjoyed Iron Fist,
Yeah,
and who like
maybe.
Finn Jones as Iron Fist. I think if they're gonna bring him back, he's probably gonna be recast. So I would just rather not see him again, because I don't know what it is, because I mean we are used to recasting at this point.
Yeah.
They've done it very recently with recasting Catherine Newton as Cassie Lang, but for some reason it just upsets me. I guess maybe I'm a stickler for continuity or whatever, but recastings right now just kind of mess me up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought there was a crossover show or project confirmed with Misty Knight and who's Jessica Henwick's character in Iron Fist? What's her name?
Colleen Wing.
I
Yeah,
always thought there was a Colleen Wing Misty Knight crossover confirmed or something. Am I mistaken?
Yeah, they have a comic together called Daughters of the Dragon, and they were sort of teasing that was a possibility, but that was sort of near the end of Iron Fist season 2 before the cancellation, I believe.
Okay.
So I think it's down the toilet, unfortunately.
Damn. Well, it remains to be seen. And if you're interested in your MCU characters, I suppose as well. I'm not too sure if this is that character I'd kind of mentioned to you as well about Fin Fang Foom from the comics at the end. If it is the character, it's clearly a massive redesign, because that character from the comics is like a really bright green purple short wearing dragon. So I guess it maybe wouldn't make sense. Yeah, and male as well. Yeah. So how did you find that sort of whole ending and battle anyway with the dragons and stuff? Because if you compare it to the first bit of the film, it feels like a different movie set, kind of. You know what I mean? So how do you feel about that anyway?
Very much so. I found the third act to be a bit like a Transformers film, where I was sort of marveling at the quality of the CGI, but I couldn't quite make sense of anything that was happening. I think the Great Protector character, who is maybe or maybe not, an interpretation of Fin Fang Foom. I thought the CGI was absolutely incredible. Some of the best that the MCU has ever produced.
Yeah, definitely.
But I had no idea what was going on. I mean, objectively, I was like, okay, now the Shadow Demon Soul Sucker is now fighting this other dragon, and they're swirling around in the air, and they're spiraling around each other, and they're fighting, and there's terrible green screen while Shang-Chi and his sister are riding the dragon. And I was like, okay, objectively, I understand what's happening, but why is this happening, and how is this connected to the sort of grounded family story that we've seen up to this point? It wasn't a letdown, and it wasn't bad, but it felt disjointed and out of place.
Yeah, it felt like a scene that belonged in Pacific Rim or something, or like Kong Skull Island, those kind of films where it's these big elaborate monsters. Like that's not something the MCU has ever done before, and Don't be wrong, I didn't dislike it. I'm kind of in a weird spot, Callum, where I think that scene, that act works really well on its own, but not necessarily in this film, if that makes sense. It's just that it feels quite disjointed, and it feels quite. I was quite taken aback. I was like, "Whoa, is this an MCU film? What's going on?" It's got sort of like soul sucking demons and flying dragons. Like this isn't Marvel, but sure, at least they tried something new and thought outside the box.
Yeah, I think maybe it just didn't fit as a first film for a character, especially because the end result of this third act is actually the death of Wenwu, a character that I think we were both quite eager to see in future films. I said to you right before we saw this film,
Yeah,
he could maybe be almost the business more street level character villain presence in
yeah,
the MCU, whilst you have Kang as sort of the cosmic time element. And then you said, bro, what if they kill him though? And then we both had a hearty chuckle. And then he gets his soul sucked out by a demon.
yeah,
So
yeah,
for that to be the end of it, after this whole uh beef between him and his kids. One, I am a bit sick of the
yeah,
heroes fighting their dad slash family trope.
yeah. It's gone a bit
Not
old
not
now.
not in films alone, but especially in the MCU. We were seeing it every other film. We had it with Thor Ragnarok and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 most recently, and I think I'm just a bit done with it. But for it to be the end of such a seemingly amazing character who was just starting out his career in the MCU, to have him one and done was just really really disappointing. And I think that sort of what was part of why it felt really out of place, especially for a first film.
Yeah, I'd have to agree, buddy, to be honest with you. I definitely. One thing we mentioned on non-spoiler review was the presence of sorry, not the presence, but the confirmation of the Mandarin and things like that, and how they address it from Iron Man 3. And if I'm not sure if this character was marketed at all. Trevor Slattery, I'm naming here. But he's obviously back in this film. I think is Ben Kingsley is the
Yes.
actor's name. How do you felt like they dealt with that? Because I guess it's gonna be a big talking point from this film, because I think he's a real comedic presence along with his adorable you don't think so, but adorable sidekick Morris. I mean, you think that creature's horrific, don't
It was a
you?
horrifying monster. Like
No.
everybody in the theater was like, "Oh," as though it was like a cute puppy. Like, it has no face. It's a monster. Uh, you know, I thought that Trevor felt very out of place, but the humor that he brought sort of negated the awkward vibe that he also brought to the whole thing. As I said before in the non spoilers, like everybody in the theater was in hysterics anytime he said anything. But like, I'm not someone to laugh out loud, so I was sort of not taking part in that, which I think sort of killed the vibe a little. So I'm not sure it was for me, and I'm not sure he fit in. I feel like he sort of, if anything, added to the vibe of the second half, third act, sort of feeling very, very,
Yeah.
misplaced, or out of place in the rest of the film.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's kind of similar to me when you have this character, this pre-existing character that you ingrain into such a different culture from what we're used to. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Everett Ross in Black Panther, where it's a previous character we've seen from the films. Has a few quips here and there. You know what I mean? Clearly a comedic actor by nature. And you kind of ingrain him into this culture that's so different from anything we've seen in the MCU so far. So it reminded me of a little bit like that, where the vibe isn't quite right, or there's something a little bit off. I do think Ben Kingsley's presence in this film was probably a little bit better than Martin Freeman's in Black Panther, just because I think he's got a little bit more to do than that character, than that actor in that film. But don't get me wrong, like I really love Martin Freeman as well. He's fantastic. But yeah, I think Trevor Slattery is really really funny here. I think he's a really great character that they've brought back. Um, I think I was said to you as well. Like, I think this Morris alien creature thing, whatever it is, I thought they were trying to market that as like a baby Yoda type thing. You know what I mean? Like really,
Mm.
really sell the shit out of the plush toys of that. You know what I mean? That's how it felt. But I mean, yeah, it seems like he's going to be staying in Ta Lao at the minute. Then doesn't it? It kind of seems like that's where he's staying. I'm not too sure if they're going to bring him back for any future installments. I think they'd be silly not to, given that just by our theater reception, people seem to love him.
Yeah, I mean it's just a bit odd that, like, you know, the very bizarre creative decisions made in Iron Man 3 now, you know, they're
Yeah, I
sort
know.
of saddled with. You know, I read on the Wikipedia that of Iron Man 3 that it was actually Shane Black's full intention for you know, for Guy Pearce to be like the MCU's comic book Mandarin.
Oh, really?
You know, as in, you know, him just having dragon tattoos and announcing that he's the Mandarin meant he was, you know, the MCU's adaptation of the Mandarin from the comics. Which, I mean, I'm surprised, you know, it didn't get more, like, you know, abuse at the time.
Yeah, I know. You'd think so, wouldn't
You
you?
know, honestly, because I think if they made some of the creative decisions that they made in Iron Man 3 today,
Yeah.
they would get a lot more heat. You know, so I just find it funny that, you know, they've brought this character into the MCU who does not exist in the
Yeah, completely.
comics, and now, you know, one of the presumably tentpole franchises for the MCU going forward, based on the reactions to this film that we're hearing, that they might just be saddled with Trevor Slattery, the out of work British actor.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I think the MCU in general is really good at taking shit plot lines from previous films and retconning them to make really funny and actually important moments. You know, it kind of reminds me how they've dealt with the Incredible Hulk in a way, with a lot of the characters there. Obviously, Abomination they brought back and kind of had a really good redesign. So I think MCU is good at sort of taking ideas from the early days where they're still trying to find their footing. And I would include Iron Man 3 in that personally, because that was kind of their first when I think of Iron Man 3, I kind of think that was the first MCU film where people would go see it no matter what, because that was straight after the Avengers. That's when people kind of thought, I mean, that film made like $1 billion. I mean, that for the third film in a trilogy, like on early days, that thing is insane. Like, and it's not even that good. You know, it's still pretty good, but you know, it's not amazing. Um, I mean, so yeah, I think for me, the MCU's always been good at that, and I think here it's a really smart decision to take that plot line. You know, and it baffles me that we're here today after watching Iron Man 3 all those years ago. And now we've sort of got this plot line. Like it feels like it shouldn't make sense, but it does. So, you know, fair play to them for that. I think they handled it really well.
Yeah, you know, whenever Shang-Chi and Katie get back to San Francisco, as you mentioned before, they are recruited by Wong.
Yeah.
And you know, we'll talk about the end credit scenes in a second, but you know, the movie is now being marketed as, you know, the solo film for Marvel's next Avenger, Shang-Chi. So if he does become a part of the Avengers, are we just going to be seeing like Katie just hovering in the background? Because, you know,
Mm.
Wong brings her along for the ride. You know, he gives her the full pitch along with Shang-Chi. So does it look like, you know, she's just going to be in the background just cracking jokes, you know, while being, you know, in essence useless?
Yeah, I mean, I guess she is going to be that kind of side character, like the Pepper Potts of the Avengers now. You know what I mean? And kind of a character that comes up here and there throughout the films. I think I think having Shang-Chi become an Avenger is a really I hope they do that. You know, I'm not sure if it's confirmed or anything yet. I really hope that it would, you know, be silly not to at this point, but I think it would be really good just to he would be like the you know, part of the new generation. I mean, it's going to be crazy because there's going to be a generation growing up with, like, you know, Shang-Chi, you know, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, maybe Black Panther as Avengers and stuff, and like that generation will not have grown up with like the traditional six. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's quite funny to me how the MCU is kind of, you know, into its, what is it, second decade now? Yeah, yeah, it's 20. No, how long has it been going on for now? Is it in its second decade? I can't remember. Yeah, it
It's
is. Yeah, it
it's
is.
2008, so yeah.
Yeah, it's going on a while. Um, I mean, yeah, I mean, did you want to hop in with the thoughts and just the credit scenes then, buddy? Because
Sure.
I've quite a bit
Yeah,
to
you
say.
know,
Yeah.
we've seen this pitch from Wong. Do you think that means we might see Shang-Chi in Multiverse of Madness?
Oh man, I mean, we kind of said this as well, didn't we? Both Spider-Man No Way Home and Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness are going to be stacked, bro. I mean, just it's a little bit worrying. Usually, you know, especially with Sam Raimi's kind of, you know, this director is, you know, with his Spider-Man films, he's got contained characters that he's familiar with. Like, it's not, you know, he's not got, well, ironically enough, I suppose Doctor Strange was referenced in the Spider-Man film, so maybe he's got kind of kind of a soft spot for the character. I don't know, but I mean, yeah, I certainly think that he can definitely pull it off. I hope Shang-Chi's in that film. The more I'd love to see of Simu Liu, the better, because I think he's incredible. And with that, I do think it makes sense for him to be in there with Wong's presence in that film. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think it'd be odd. We always, well, not we specifically, but Marvel fans themselves, see, an Avengers level threat happen in a solo film, and then just one person decides to sort it out, and then no one comes to help.
Yeah.
The examples that come to mind is Iron Man 3. The president gets kidnapped, but somehow that's Iron Man's problem, and
Yeah,
no one
Winter
else
Soldier
is.
as well, kind of as
Even
well.
Captain America, Captain America, isn't concerned that the president's been kidnapped. It doesn't really line
Yeah.
up. So to have this mystical character introduced 1 year before, who already has connections to Wong, to not be brought in whenever there's a huge mystical related crisis, it just creates logical issues. But the MCU has plenty of those, so I mean it's not anything new or different. But just with the appearances of Wong, being so close to each other, here and then in Spider-Man No Way Home, and then in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse Madness, having those 3 films in a 6-month window, all having Wong in them, you'd like to think
Yeah.
all of them are going to sort of culminate and bring all those characters together.
Yeah, definitely, bro. It's exciting. It's a really exciting time for the universe as well. And I still can't get over how weird it was to see sort of human Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk again. That's one of the characters in the MCU where I still stand by this, that they've completely fucked. Like, that is one character where they just don't know what to do with him whatsoever. Like, it's a little bit frustrating at this point, because it's a character. It's probably one of the first superhero characters that I loved. The Ang Lee Hulk film was probably the first, along with the X-Men and Spider-Man films, that superhero films that I ever watched. Certainly it was a big film of my childhood, so I love the character. I just think they've made a complete mess of that, to be honest. It's a pity, because as I say, the character's got so much potential, and Mark Ruffalo's fantastic.
I
How
don't
do you
think
think
he
they're
does have
gonna?
any potential. I think the Hulk is like one of the least interesting characters in all of Marvel comics. Like, I think he has the least scope for dimensions. He has Planet Hulk, he has World War Hulk. That's it. And they've made even Hulk himself this kind of like grumpy toddler, rather than like a seasoned warrior like he is in those comics. So, I mean, there's no way for for them to do anything from the comics really for Hulk.
Yeah, I guess when I mean potential, I kind of mean like with sort of the big storylines. Like, Hulk's got, oh, oops, drop my mic. Certainly, like, the Hulk has kind of some of the most popular Marvel storylines in the last 15 years. Obviously, World War Hulk, Planet Hulk. I'm not sure they'll ever do that because Ragnarok and stuff like that now. But I look back at the Hulk in the MCU, I kind of think Ragnarok was where I was most happy with the character, aside from the Incredible Hulk, which I know is not a popular opinion. So I'll stick with the Ragnarok opinion. So yeah, I think a talking Hulk is always good, because as you say, the character can be quite bland, I guess, when it's just grr, you know what I mean. So
Yeah,
that's how I felt about it. How did you feel?
I think if you're a fan of the comic Planet Hulk, Ragnarok must have been an absolute slap in the face.
Yeah, you'd be
Because
raging. Yeah,
if you even watch the Planet Hulk animated film, and then you watch Ragnarok, they couldn't be more different. Even Sakaar as a planet, in one it's a desolate desert wasteland, and the comp's essentially a western, and then in Ragnarok it's like this metropolitan city, and it's within this comedy film. Like,
yeah.
it must
I
be
mean, yeah,
just
yeah.
really jarring for a huge fan of that comic.
So I mean, I think the She-Hulk character is way more compelling than Bruce Banner Hulk, personally. I think the She-Hulk character is probably the most underrated female character in comic book lore, to be honest with you. Just because I guess just because, like, she's like always in she's always in that superhero form. You know what I mean? So it kind of adds a new element to the characters and the real secret identity stuff, which the MCU is moving away from anyway. So it makes sense to have that. And I think it's I'm surprised actually we're just getting She-Hulk project that late on. You know what I mean? And I like you said, with Mark Ruffalo being Mark Ruffalo and not green muscular Mark Ruffalo, it makes sense budget wise for that show as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Here, we also get the return of Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, giving off a
Yeah.
much more Captain Marvel vibe rather than Endgame vibe, which I
Yep.
think I'm excited about. But I think there will be people who just don't like Brie Larson and will never like Brie Larson. But I thought she was charming and likable in Captain Marvel, and then really abrasive in Avengers Endgame. So and Endgame was made first, so it was either that it was an issue of that was her first her first outing as that character, so she hadn't really taken shape yet, and then it was fully formed by the time of Captain Marvel. My concern was that because Captain Marvel is set first, they were painting her as this happy and optimistic character then, and then she was more grizzled post snap. But it seems more the other way, that because they were shot out of order, it's just the character hadn't
Yeah.
been fully developed yet, and the character is this sort of more likable character that I think we get a glimpse of here. So I think this portrayal will make more people happy.
Yeah, completely, man. I really enjoy the Captain Marvel film, and the Brie Larson hate online really does baffle me to this day. It's funny how like one Wired autocomplete interview can just tarnish someone in the public eye. Really, it's a pity because we'll not get into that interview in depth, but I've watched it, and I'll admit
Yeah,
it's probably not the best. She probably didn't come across the best, but I mean, I've watched some of those other Wired autocomplete interviews, and like KJ Apple one, for instance, like KJ Apple does not come across well in an interview at all, but people absolutely love him. So maybe it's just a personal thing that people just don't like Brie Larson, because I've seen loads of those Wired autocomplete interviews where the celebrities don't come across well at all. And I get it, because it's not strictly an interview. It's just reading questions from a piece of paper that have been, predetermined. So, I get it's
yeah.
maybe it just doesn't come across well. I will hold my hands up. I,
Also
I can
off the
see what.
back of like a 7-hour day of other interviewers.
Exactly. And any other interview, I mean, she's hosted Jimmy Kimmel, and when I watched that, she seemed really funny. Like, she can hold her own. She did a great interview with Jamie Foxx as well. She's very talented, and I really don't understand the hate for her. I mean, I really like her, and she does good YouTube videos as well. Check out her channel. She does very good videos. Um, but yeah, bro, I mean, the last thing I really wanted to touch on in this film was the Katie and Shang-Chi dynamic, and whether you saw potential romance there. I know it's kind of something we commented on after this cinema. I personally felt like it's good to have a platonic relationship, akin to Captain
Yeah.
America and Black Widow. I just wanted to hear your take on that.
Yeah, Simu Liu has sort of said that there's, the door's open there, which is curious. I definitely thought that, it'd be Marvel standard that, it would end with them, getting together, or that they'd actually do something completely different and start with them together, because we haven't actually ever had a pre-existing couple that actually lasted, because I mean, it would have created an awkward dynamic if he had then been lying to her for 10 years and they've been in a relationship.
Certainly, yeah.
I don't really know how you could be in a relationship with someone who you know so little about, or what is actually a lie. I think that would have maybe caused issues with their personal life. But I thought that would have been fresh and interesting if they'd been already established. Uh, yeah, I'm pretty much completely indifferent to it. Provided it's good, I have no issue either way. I think their friendship was great. The fact that they didn't end with them getting together was curious. I thought it was I thought it was something fresh and interesting and new. But if they get together in the future, I'm not going to have an issue.
Yeah, I think you really you really commented that really well. I'd agree with you, to be honest. I don't have any further remarks on the film unless you do.
I've got a couple of things on the two post-credit scenes. As we'd said before, the rings are alien in origin. They were created in space by uh I don't remember
Me neither.
the race of aliens,
Me
but
neither.
I just wanted to know if we see we saw in this film a more mystical side, him fighting this soul-sucking demon creature. Do you think that we're going to get an alien antagonist next film?
Well, it's interesting because it feels like the MCU is building more of those sort of magical or supernatural villains as of late. I remember it's so hard to believe that it started off with these like Obadiah Stane type characters, and now they're soul sucking demons and giant purple aliens. The films have come a long way, so I would certainly like to see Yeah, I'm a big. I know you're maybe not a big fan of this, but I'm a big sort of time travel fan. I love those kind of aspects. I'd love to see like a time loop MCU film. I think that'd be absolutely amazing. Like I think that'd be so intriguing. I mean, I hold out hope for like a Doctor Strange film where like all it is a time loop. You know, similar to how he deals with Dormammu, maybe something like that. But I think it's inevitable that the Doctor Strange films are going to conclude with him facing off against Baron Mordo or Dormammu. Like Baron Mordo is one of those characters in the MCU that people forget about. I think in terms of he's out there. I think isn't he? So I mean, Baron Mordo and Dormammu, I think, are going to be the villains for the third Doctor Strange film, maybe the fourth, or maybe an Avengers film, because I think Dormammu is certainly a huge character. Yeah, that's how I feel about it, mate. What about you?
Yeah, I would honestly love, as you said, an MCU film that committed to one genre that was sort of out of the box, because we see, that them recently, that they've been sort of applauded for doing fresher stuff, where they've essentially taken the Marvel formula and then just added like, a secondary level of,
Yeah,
this other genre. But I would just like to see fully, an introduction of a character that is just a time loop film. It's just Groundhog Day, but for a superhero,
yeah,
or a superhero couple or something. Because that'd just be incredible, wouldn't it? But they never do it. I just
no,
think that'd be fantastic. And then with Dormammu, I feel like Dormammu had a lot of potential, but now they've ruined it. Like I don't see how I don't see how they can bring that character back. After he's been such a significant presence and created one of the most iconic scenes in the MCU, with the bargaining scene. I don't know how you organically bring him back and make us care. I think there's some villains that are sort of one and done, and there's some villains that should last, and that was one that should last, but I don't think will make sense if they try to bring back.
yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's interesting as well because obviously Kang is a presence as well, and potential other multiversal villains, remains to be seen. I think Dormammu is one of those ones that is slept on actually. Not a lot of people, sometimes I'd occasionally watch a few theory videos, breakdowns, and Dormammu is not a character that's brought up a lot. Usually it's your
Mm.
Mephistos or things like that. I mean, for a time there, the online sort of comic book community were obsessed with Mephisto, weren't they? With one
It was
division
very
and
reasonable.
yeah, I know. I actually agree with you on that one. I do feel like they kind of were definitely hinting towards that, certainly very strongly. Yeah, I think Dormammu, Baron Mordo as well is definitely, I think, going to be a presence in the Doctor Strange films, and with Doctor Strange, it makes sense to name him, of course, because obviously Wong is a big presence here, so I do think that Simu is going to appear in the Doctor Strange sequel.
Yeah, I hate how Dormammu looks. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I do enjoy it, but I would like to see how they kind of do the glowing sort of well, he have like a glowing sort of pumpkin head or something like a glowing purple, sorry, a glowing
Yeah,
sort of flame for a head, doesn't he in the comics?
yeah. I mean, I understand maybe that would have just been not cinematic enough to just have a just like a flaming skull, But then
Yeah,
I think if you just had him then amongst the dark dimension, because they ended up with Dormammu having this giant purple like shifting face. But I mean, if you just have that be the aesthetic of the dark dimension, with them him with his flaming head in the middle, I feel like that achieves the same thing.
yeah, the MCU really has amazing villains still to come. I mean, if Fantastic Four is confirmed, Galactus is bound to be a Thanos type villain. Doctor Doom is probably one of my favorite villains, I would say. And of course, if they bring in the X-Men, there's Magneto, there's loads they could choose from. So I think the MCU is going to be a really exciting um, universe for years to come. Buddy, to be honest with you, I think this film is just another example of what it does so well. Don't get me wrong, I think doing the channel and watching a lot more other films has kind of made me appreciate them more. And maybe I certainly don't love the MCU as much as I used to, but that's not because it's bad. It's just because my tastes have changed. I do prefer those sort of smaller stories. But that being said, the MCU still holds a firm place in my heart, and I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I think that with the end credit scenes, I honestly believe that Wong karaoke is the single best joke in the MCU.
It's up
Just
there, isn't
because
it?
I think
Yeah.
it was so well done. It was so funny. All those actors are incredible. They all have incredible comedic chops, and also just I love callbacks. Especially to something that was already funny. them bringing it back, I thought just worked really well for me.
Completely, and it's a pity that the second credit scene is so disappointing, isn't it?
Well, it was overhyped. You know, I think we had both heard rumblings that it was quote unquote mind blowing, which I think was
A firm
I mean that's
exaggeration,
ridiculous.
surely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an exaggeration. But I do think the implications for the universe are fun. Do you think that Xialing is going to use the Ten Rings for good?
I think it's definitely gonna come into the is the character who's like forming the Dark Avengers, the Thunderbolts, called Valerie, isn't she? I think she's definitely
Yeah,
gonna come into play there for sure. It'll be interesting to see like a sort of a sibling,
or Valentina
Valentina, Val or
and
something. Yeah,
Fontaine. Yep.
it's certainly be interesting to see like a sibling dynamic similar to Thor and Loki. So I mean, yeah, I think she might have like a villainous presence. I didn't really get any good guy vibes from her, to be honest, in the film.
No, I mean, she wasn't really enough of a character to know either way.
Yeah.
But if you're using the precedent and the history of the Ten Rings, it's probably not for good. Let's be honest.
Yeah, no, I
But then
absolutely
if we
agree.
just see them, having if the Ten Rings are a villainous presence in another film, great. Then they're essentially
Yeah,
the new Hydra, I guess. But if you just have them be an occurring and reoccurring presence within the Shang-Chi films, I feel like it's gonna tire very quickly.
yeah, not completely. I think there's room for them to become like the new Hydra or AIM or something. Definitely, 100%. Any more remarks from you, buddy?
Nothing else for me, Matthew.
No, well, that wraps up. I'd imagine this would be a podcast at this stage. So that wraps up another
Yeah.
podcast on the channel. We hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to check out our other MCU, reviews, our first ever podcast was on this universe. It was our bread and butter back in the day. So yeah, we've done actually a lot of MCU content as of late, haven't we? We did a No Way Home trailer reaction. We've done What If reviews. We've done other things. So there's been a lot of superhero content. I'm enjoying getting back into that sort of stuff again. But yeah, thanks very much for your time today, Callum. Appreciate it. And thank you very much, viewers, for your time. We hope you guys are all well. Hope your family and friends are all safe and well too. Take care, everyone, and bye-bye.
Bye bye.